I also want to recognize our outstanding development, communications, and public relations team. Tracy Moore, Kevin Robinson, Jerry Ann Smart, Sherry Owens, Rowan Mullingauer, Tracy Simons, and our executive assistant, Pat Baird, for your outstanding work in putting together tonight's annual meeting together and helping us to tell the story of our healthcare heroes throughout this pandemic. And before we proceed with our meeting tonight, I need to recognize the best hospital leadership team in the country. And I will ask you to please stand when I call your names. Vice President of Human Resources, Brian Kearns. Chief Nursing Officer, Carol Egan. Vice President of Clinical Services, Jonathan Reynolds. Jonathan. Chief Financial Officer, Judy Fox. Our Vice President of Medical Group Operations, Tom Frank. Our newest member of our senior leadership team, Vice President of Support Services, Roger Wakeman. Our Senior Information Technology Site Leader, Adam Sears. Our Senior Director for Development and Community Relations, Tracy Moore. And why don't I ask you to hold your applause, because I got several of physicians and so forth. Some couldn't make it tonight. They had some other commitments, but and we'll applause at the end if you would. Medical Director for Psychiatric Services, Dr. Matthew Saumons. Our Chief Medical Director, Dr. Mel Boynton, who had another commitment tonight. Our Medical Director for Cardiology, Dr. Stan Shapiro. Our Medical Director for Population Health, Dr. Phil Lapp, who you'll hear from shortly. Our Chief Medical Information Officer, Dr. Rick Hildebrandt. And our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Todd Gregory. Every hospital in our country has been tested by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I have been fortunate that I was here in Rutland during this time, because there is no group of people I would have rather been fighting this war with than this group of outstanding healthcare leaders. So now it's my privilege to introduce you to Joe Kraus, who's the chair of our hospital board of directors. As many of you know, Joe has a strong history of volunteer leadership in our community. Prior to his retirement in 2012, Joe served as an executive with Central Vermont Public Service from 1980 until its sale in 2012. Many of you know Joe through his successful leadership as volunteer chair of Rutland's Project Vision. We have been fortunate to have Joe's leadership as a part of the board for the past 7 years, and the past 2 as our board chair. I personally would like to thank Joe for his support, direction, and leadership throughout the greatest public health crisis of our generation. Rutland Regional is fortunate to have had someone with Joe's executive experience, impeccable character, and unwavering dedication to our community and our hospital during this critical period in the history of Rutland Regional Medical Center. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Joe Kraus, Chair of the Rutland Regional Board of Directors.
Thank you, Claudia. Good evening and welcome, everyone. The last time I was on this stage, I was sitting in a chair right there as a contestant in the Newlywed Game. When they approached Peg and I about whether or not we'd be willing to participate, Peg was very enthusiastic. She said, "I would love to participate on one condition." And that one condition was that I would say or do nothing that would embarrass the family. I said, honey, of course I'm not going to do anything that would embarrass the family. You know that. And in fact, I'm a little upset that you even had to ask. I'm certain tonight will go much better. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I would like to call to order the 2022 annual meeting of the Corporators. I would like to start by identifying the members of the Board of Directors. I will also identify those individuals who are on the board as representatives of other organizations or initiatives. So, board members, please stand when I call your name. Dr. Mary Beerworth. And I'd ask we hold our applause till the end. Dr. Patrick Bender, Chief Quality Officer at the University of Vermont Medical Center. John Casella. Dr. Matt Conway, Medical Staff Vice President, Rutland Regional. Dick Corsell, Executive Director, Rutland Mental Health Services. Dan Dunges. Paul Gallo. Joan Gamble, Chair of the James T. Bouse Health Trust. Margot Jones. Sarah King, Executive Director, VNA and Hospice of the Southwest Region. Dr. Phil Lapp, Medical Staff President, Rutland Regional. Dr. Edward Marins, Chief Clinical Officer, Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. Michelle Nelson. Dr. Bob Riley, Board Chair of Community Health Rutland. Denise Clark, our Secretary, and Mark Foley Jr., our Vice Chair. Thanks to each of you for your service and leadership to the hospital and to our community. There is one board member in particular I would like to express my personal thanks to. Mark, would you stand up for a moment? During the last 2 years when I served as chair, Mark was our co-chair. And I was blessed to have such a man serve with me. We went through a lot, and through it all, I could count on Mark to provide really honest feedback, sometimes brutally honest feedback, wise advice, and constant good humor. Mark, you were an indispensable partner, and I will miss working with you. Thank you so much. Historically, this meeting begins with a report of the chair of the hospital's board of directors, and I will follow that tradition again this year. I am delighted that after 2 long years, we are finally able to gather together in person. And I am particularly pleased that we are doing so at one of my favorite places in all the world, the Paramount Theater. With its impressive history and beautiful architecture, this magnificent theater would be the envy of any community in America. It is therefore fitting that our hospital, which recently celebrated its 125th anniversary, has chosen this special place for this annual meeting. 125 years of service is a major milestone. Yet you probably didn't hear much about it. And the reason is simple. We were struggling to take care of the very sick people that filled all of our rooms, the emergency department, and even our hallways. Most survived, but not everyone. COVID-19 presented challenges that could have easily overwhelmed the hospital. However, that is not what happened. To the contrary, Rutland Regional Medical Center met the challenge and took swift and decisive actions that enabled our hospital to care for all of us throughout the pandemic. With the leadership and support from our governor, who will join us in person this evening, hospitals and healthcare providers throughout the state rose to the occasion in heroic ways. Our hospital was no exception. In 2021, after many months of responding to COVID-19, Rutland Regional opened a vaccination clinic capable of vaccinating 600 to 800 people a day. Our staff ran this clinic 7 days a week, vaccinating the majority of the people in our area. At the same time, the hospital continued to care for patients functioning at the limits of our capacity through several COVID surges that seemed almost never ending. Our staff selflessly worked extra shifts to ensure that we remained open and ready to care for anyone who needed it, and they did it at great personal risk. This effort has taken a toll. Our nurses and clinical staff are exhausted both emotionally and physically, and yet they continue to work. They work because they are our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, our friends and neighbors, and they know we need them. This is the great strength of our community hospital, and it reflects the character and commitment of you, our community. Remarkably, through all of this, we were again awarded magnet status, which is the highest healthcare designation bestowed by the American Nurses Association. Only 2 of Vermont's 13 hospitals received this recognition for excellence in healthcare. In addition, we received the highest award for hospital safety and quality by the independent Leapfrog Group. No other Vermont hospital received so high a rating. For all these reasons, I am incredibly proud of our leadership, our clinical providers, and all our staff. They have been outstanding, and I thank all of them from the bottom of my heart. You are the best. For the moment, the COVID pandemic appears to be slowing, but the challenges facing hospitals have not. Healthcare systems across the country are dealing with unprecedented patient volumes, workforce shortages, and skyrocketing costs. At the same time, the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates that apply to most of our patients do not even begin to cover the costs of caring for those patients. Still, we care for everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. Rutland Regional is doing everything we can to respond to these pressures. However, we cannot solve these extraordinary challenges alone. We will need our regulator, the Green Mountain Care Board, and our state to understand our challenges and be full partners in finding solutions that preserve our financial stability so we can continue to meet the healthcare needs of our community for the next 125 years. We look forward to working with them in the months and years ahead. With strong leadership and dedicated, resilient providers and staff, I am confident that our hospital will succeed and continue to provide outstanding care that meets the changing needs of our community. In fact, we are working to develop a unique partnership with the other healthcare providers in our community with the goal of keeping us all healthy so that we do not need the more intense care that only the hospital can provide. I expect you will hear more about this important effort later this year. If adversity is the true test of character, the events of the last 2 years have proven once again that we are an exceptional community within an exceptional hospital, and that we will endure. Indeed, we will thrive. Tonight's speakers will share some of the stories of strength and resilience from the providers and staff who cared for us throughout the pandemic, and from some of the leaders who continue to guide the way. Thank you. Next. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the medical staff report. I am pleased to introduce Dr. Phil Lapp, who, in addition to his role as medical staff president, is the medical director of the Rutland Diabetes and Endocrinology Center. Please welcome to the podium Dr. Phil Lapp.
Thank you, Joe. I've been invited to speak this evening in my capacity as president of the Rutland Regional Medical Staff, and I'm honored to have this opportunity to publicly recognize the many contributions of our physicians, nurse practitioners, nurse anesthetists, and physician's assistants. Our ability to provide care for our community and maintain the consistent operations of our health system during these difficult times has required teamwork at all levels, So we also want to recognize and thank all the other departments who partner with us: nursing, social work, pharmacy, lab and imaging services, facilities and engineering, food services, finance and accounting, human resources, security, our volunteers, and many, many more. Without them, none of this work would have been possible. Next, I'm pleased to welcome and introduce the 17 new members who've joined our medical staff over this past year. Samuel Brown, DO, Emergency Medicine. Brittany Canfield, DNP, Wound, Ostomy, and Continence Care. Haley Chaffee, CRNA, Anesthesiology. Tariq Chaudhry, MD, Anesthesiology. Chaidanma Enyana, MD, Nephrology. Thatcher Friant, PA, Emergency Medicine. Calvin Gilkey, Hospital Medicine. Veronica Yedlovsky, Pulmonary and Sleep Medicine. Carlton Kellogg, PA, Psychiatry. Lindsay Kleeman-Forsteber, MD, Orthopedics. Samuel McCord, MD, Psychiatry. Hannah Mulligan, APRN, Occupational Health and Employee Wellness. Christiane Sandler, PA, Emergency Medicine. Taryn Schneider, PA, Orthopedics. Whitney Sherman, MD, Hospital Medicine. Michael Stevens, PA, Emergency Medicine. And Christopher Yen, MD, Critical Care Medicine. At this time, I would also like to extend a special thank you to Dr. Mark Stickney, who is finishing his term as the Secretary and Treasurer of the Rutland Regional Medical Staff. Dr. Stickney has been a member of the Medical Executive Committee in various capacities for over 20 years, and his many contributions have been greatly appreciated. Next, I want to take this opportunity to thank some of our retiring providers for their many years of service to our community. Kathy Sommer with 14 years in anesthesia. Tim Daly, also 14 years in anesthesia. Joan Addig, 25 years of service, most recently with wound care at general surgery. Ann Baylock, 20 years in behavioral health. Harvey Reich, 28 years as head of our ICU. And Bart Bonazinga, 41 years in cardiology. And most impressively, Howard Weaver, 50 years of service in general practice and gastroenterology. I also want to recognize Becky Banco, who recently retired after more than 25 years of service in the medical staff office as our physician recruiter. And I also need to thank Stephanie Zahur and Sarah McEwen, who have been an endless source of support and assistance to me during my tenure as president of the medical staff. Thank you for your time tonight, and I'd like to welcome back to the podium Joe Kraus. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joan Gamble. Joan is an active community volunteer and currently serves on the hospital's board of directors as chair of the James T. Bouse Health Trust Committee. Please welcome Joan.
Thank you, Joe. For 25 years, the Bouse Health Trust has worked to measurably improve the health of Rutland County residents. We achieve our mission by focusing on two efforts. First, we conduct a competitive process every year to give out $300,000 in grants to fund innovative new community programs. So 3 organizations a year receive $100,000 each that they can spend over 3 years. What's amazing is over 64% of the 69 programs that Bouse has funded since it started in 1997 are still operating, which is amazing since these are startup programs. Secondly, we oversee the preparation of a comprehensive community needs assessment once every 3 years. This assessment provides the criteria both for our grant making, but it also helps the hospital and other nonprofits to focus their efforts where there is the highest need in the community. The 2021 BOUS Community Health Needs Assessment identified significant needs in housing, mental health, the aging community, and child care and parenting. BOUS Health Trust has taken the 2021 Health Needs Assessment to a new level, working with community partners to develop an implementation plan targeted at these areas of need and an associated monitoring of the plan. In addition, based on these needs, we gave $100,000 to the following 3 grant recipients in 2022. First, to Come Alive Outside, where the BOUS funds will support the evolution of the Come Alive Outside flagship outdoor passport program and turn it into a mobile application to support underserved populations like older Vermonters like me who use technology and lower income adults who are at risk or already suffering from chronic physical and mental issues. The program's really cool because it has very specific outdoor activities that are specific to our region. The second grant that we gave was to the Vermont Farmers Food Center for a program called Everyone Eats 2.0. It's an extension of a program that started during COVID times to address food insecurity. Local restaurants prepare nutritious meals that are provided to community members either in transitional housing situations where it's difficult to cook or to older Vermonters who don't make their own meals. The third grant we gave was to the Vermont Adult Learning's new Energy Works program, where Vermont Adult Learning has partnered with statewide agencies and Brock Community Action to provide a comprehensive training program to grow the weatherization labor workforce. This will prepare individuals for well-paying, stable careers in weatherization and solar panel and heat pump installation. So this helps both our housing stock and it improves the health of all those involved, people living in the houses or people who now have better jobs. Although the BOUS Health Trust has been around for a long time with the same mission, we're continually improving our process. For example, we are currently working with the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, or JEDI collaborative to better address health equity issues, which became more visible during COVID. If you want to learn more about BOUS or our grantees, you can check out the BOUS Health Trust annual report. Oh, it's included in your meeting packet, and it's available on the website. I haven't seen the packet yet. So all this work takes a strong team. And we are lucky that the BOUS Health efforts are led by 2 amazing women. Jamie Bentley, the Community Impact Coordinator at the hospital, and Tracy Moore, Senior Director of Development and Community Relations. They are supported by the members of the BOUS Health Trust Committee. Unlike other board committees, the majority of BOUS community members are not on the hospital board. A few of us are. The 3 members of the committee who are also on the hospital board are Claudio Fort, Mary Beerworth, a recently retired Rutland Regional OBGYN, and myself. The rest of the community members represent different aspects of the community, and they include Renee Bousquet from the State Department of Health, Kate Bosnich from Rutland City Schools, Doug Norford from Rutland Mental Health, Nancy Gordon from Vermont 211, Lisa Ryan, Director of Domestic Violence Response Systems at the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, and Ashley Bride, Executive Director of the United Way. And she's our newest member, and she is replacing Vicki Young. I want to stop for a minute and give a shout out to Vicki Young, who is stepping down from the Baus Health Trust after 8 years. Vicki has spent close to 25 years supporting health in our region, between serving on the Rutland Regional Board, the Rutland Health Foundation Board, in addition to the Baus Health Trust. Vicki, would you mind standing so that we can all give her a warm round of applause? Thank you, Vicki. The Baus Health Trust committee is further supported by a Health Trust Review Committee that is made up of 20 community experts who are involved in the nonprofits in our community and help us in the grant funding and oversight process and with the community health needs assessment. I can't tell you how proud I am to be involved in the Baus Health Trust and just be a small part of what the Baus Health Trust does to improve health and wellness in our community. So thank you, and now I'd like to welcome back Joe Kraus, our phenomenal hospital board chair and tireless community supporter.
Thank you so much, Joan. At this time, Claudio will present his report as President and CEO, including some significant highlights from 2021 and the hospital's continued response to COVID-19.
Thanks, Joe. As our board chair, Joe Kraus, just mentioned, last September marked Rutland Regional Medical Center's 125th year of service to Vermonters. This milestone did not receive the usual fanfare, as our hospital was focused not on celebrations, but on preparing for another wave of attack from the COVID-19 virus. And, as we now all know, last fall and winter was the most challenging period for us in the entire pandemic. We did not think we would be in this position, as we had just finished providing over 60,000 vaccination shots to our community. Our staff were fatigued and battle-weary from the toll of the prior 18 months. Yet they knew, ultimately, if they did not continue, there would be no one else who had the ability to care for those suffering from COVID, as well as other severe illnesses and injuries. And I am tremendously proud to announce that we succeeded in our efforts. Against overwhelming challenges, we successfully treated hundreds of patients suffering from the effects of COVID. Working together, we ensured that critical healthcare services were available throughout this period, and that we did not have to close beds or discontinue essential services like other hospitals throughout the country were forced to do. We established critically needed COVID testing centers and vaccination programs. And we partnered closely with the Vermont Department of Health, the Vermont Agency of Human Services, and the Vermont Emergency Management Agency to coordinate care and treatment throughout this period. We are fortunate to have had the steady and principled leadership of Governor Phil Scott and his administration. Governor Scott's guidance in responding to this crisis made Vermont the most successful and admired state in the nation in our approach to protecting our communities. But despite this success, this has come at a cost. Our staff have been through 2 years of protracted trauma and have been operating in continual crisis response mode. All of us throughout our country, state, and community have been through a period of extreme stress, where we were concerned about the health of our parents and our vulnerable friends and neighbors who had underlying health problems. We have been concerned about the impact on our school-aged children. We have been isolated from our loved ones and have not been able to have been with them in the hospital or to attend important events in person, like graduations and weddings. We have all suffered throughout this pandemic, the most devastating public health crisis in our lifetimes. But unlike other workers, those on the front lines of healthcare haven't just carried their own burdens. They have also taken on the fears, anxieties, and suffering of those in their care. In response, throughout the country, many healthcare professionals simply threw in the towel. In fact, The Atlantic magazine estimates that the United States has lost as much as 20% of its healthcare workforce over the past 2 years. At Rutland Regional, workforce recruitment and retention is our top priority as we work to recover from the pandemic. Today, the pandemic itself has largely slipped out of the public eye, upstaged by politics, foreign affairs, and the dramatic resurgence of inflation. Still, the COVID-19 death toll in the United States will soon surpass 1 million lives, with over 80 million Americans infected. And despite the fact that we are done with COVID, it remains to be seen if COVID is done with us. As we in healthcare turn our attention to the future, we see more uncertainty than ever. What will COVID look like going forward? How successful will we be in our plans to rebuild our workforce? What will the demand be for the dozens of essential healthcare services we provide our community? Will the spirit of partnership with our payers and regulators continue? Will Vermont maintain its position as one of the healthiest states in the nation with one of the most progressive and lowest cost healthcare systems? I don't know the answer to these critical questions, but I do know that the solutions will come from the same resolve and cooperation we all demonstrated throughout the pandemic. Rutland Regional stands ready and willing to do our part. I remain inspired by the grit and selflessness of our employees. As we move forward from the crisis stage of the pandemic, they continue to show up to do what is needed to be done. As we move forward to brighter days and new challenges, we want to shed light on some of the people who were there for our patients at their time of need. This year's annual report attempts to tell some of the unseen, unheard stories of Rutland Regional's employees. We've created a video series called 19 Stories to document the pandemic here at our hospital. This project consists of interviews with our staff, both those who are on the front lines of care and those who work behind the scenes, keeping our hospital functioning. Some of these stories are joyful, reflecting on friendships and possibilities created in the cauldron of the pandemic. Others are as raw and painful as the pandemic itself. Tonight, I want to share part of this project with you all. It's a short video we are calling The Letter. I hope you appreciate it and the people in it as much as I do. But first, please join me in a round of applause to recognize the Rutland Regional employees and all those who supported our mission to protect our patients, protect our staff, and ensure the operational capability of Rutland Regional Medical Center throughout the pandemic.
If I were to write myself a letter and have it delivered back to who I was in February of 2020, I think that I would say, you know, this is gonna be really hard, but you're gonna do your best. I'm gonna cry again. And when it's over, you're gonna be so proud of yourself.
What would I write back to in 2020?
That's a good question. I guess, you know, not to use a cheesy metaphor, but it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I would say good luck and face every challenge with your best effort.
You're gonna make it through it. You're gonna survive. You're gonna be stronger than you think you were, because it's gonna change your perspective on a whole lot of things.
You are gonna be tested, and you are gonna be challenged, and you are gonna laugh, and you're gonna cry, and you're gonna make amazing friends. And you're going to do things professionally that you didn't see coming in your future.
Take a breath. Things are gonna get really, really crazy, but you have this. You got this. You're gonna be okay.
In the early days when we had no protection and there was a lot of fear and concerns, we still did what we needed to do to take care of the patients, and most of those patients survived. And they wouldn't have survived if we didn't have good people at the bedside 24/7.
We'll have very difficult days, but we'll all get through it. And we'll get through it because of the support of the hospital and our colleagues and the community.
I think the advice that I would give myself is to know that it was going to be a marathon and we were going to have to dig in for a long time.
It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. You will do it. And you will have your team behind you to get you through it. Stay strong. Do your job. And be there for your patient.
Do everything you can to make sure everyone knows their value and how they can feel fulfilled in what they do.
Have faith. Have faith that everything was gonna work out, because there was gonna be some really hard times.
It's stressful, but we all just kind of work as a team together, and it's really wonderful.
It's important to take time for yourself and to make sure you check in on the people that seem like they're okay, because anyone can smile, but it doesn't mean they're actually okay on the inside.
Take it day by day. Like, do the best you can.
It's okay to struggle. It's okay to not have all the answers.
Buckle up. It's gonna be a long ride.
This is not a test. This is all real.
Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today in your personal life.
Get that last hug in before everything shuts down.
Take it seriously. Be prepared for what's coming. Brace yourself emotionally, because it's gonna be a long road.
When we're overwhelmed, just take that time. Find something you enjoy. Go for a walk.
Just breathe and let it out.
We can get through this, and we're strong. You know, we can fight this. Look at where we are today.
With all due respect to my colleagues, I'd like to go off script for just one moment. As you've seen from these videos and heard earlier today, the hospital's 1,700 employees worked endless hours during the last 2 years to take care of all of us. They did whatever was necessary to get the job. During that time, we have lots of heroes, lots of long hours put in. Nobody put in more hours during the last 2 years than Claudio Fort. He worked virtually 7 days a week for 2 straight years. He did anything and everything that needed to be done. It didn't matter whether the job was large or small. If you showed up at the hospital's vaccination clinic, where most of us were vaccinated, if you were there on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday morning, there was Claudio working, not standing around, checking people in, making certain they were fine, doing whatever it took to get the job done. Such leaders are rare, and we have been very, very fortunate to have among the rarest. I don't know if we would have survived this challenge as well as we did, but for the strength and leadership of Claudio Fort. So Claudio, I'd ask you to step out here so we can give you a round of applause. Thank you. He deserves it. So with that, we will now enter into the business portion of the meeting. And I would like to remind everyone that during this portion of the meeting, only corporators are eligible to vote. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the April 7th, 2021 annual meeting minutes. This is a really important undertaking we're doing here. The minutes were included in the meeting packet, and for those members tuning in remotely, the minutes are also available on the meeting registration page for your reference. Corporate members, please vote your approval of the minutes as written by a show of hands or using the voting function on your screen. All right, all the hands I see are raised, and I'm certain all the hands at home are raised as well. The minutes are therefore approved. Thank you. The next order of business is the election of new corporate members. The slate of corporator nominations was also included in the meeting packet for your reference. Following is a list of the 2022 corporators to be elected. Sheena Danielle, Director of Nursing Emergency Department, Rutland Regional. Matthew Getty, Attorney, McCann, Morgan, and Getty. Beth Knipes, Director of Multi-Specialty Services, Rutland Regional. Timothy S. O'Connor, Certified Financial Planner, RNL and Associates. Andy Palouche, Realtor, TPW Real Estate. Tyler Richardson, Operations Director, Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland Region. Leah Roman, Director of Nursing, Women's and Children's Unit, Rutland Regional. Kevin Rushing, Manager of Security, Rutland Regional. Logan Seeley, Business Owner in Rutland. Christina Sweet, Dental Hygienist, Rutland. Arwen Turner, Executive Director, Come Alive Outside. Roger Wakeman, Vice President of Support Services, Rutland Regional. Those in favor of electing these corporators, please raise your hand or use the voting functions on your screen. Thank you all. The new corporators are elected. Next is the election of our board of directors by corporate members. The directors up for election are as follows. Denise Clark for a third 3-year term renewal. Paul Gallo for a third 3-year term renewal. Matt Kinsman for an initial 3-year term. Dr. Philip Lapp for an initial 3-year term replacing Dr. Mike Kanash. And Bob Riley appointed to represent Community Healthcare Rutland. Those in favor, please raise your hand or use the voting function on your screen to indicate your approval. Very well. Thank you. The slate of directors has been approved. Next, it is my pleasure to recognize the following board members for their many years of service, expertise, and leadership. First, we are grateful to Michael Kanash and John Casella for their many contributions to the hospital and the community over the past several years. Dr. Michael Kanash is the Medical Director of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at Rutland Regional Medical Center. Dr. Kanash began practicing in 1996 in Cody, Wyoming. He moved to Rutland in 1997 to assume the directorship for the Rehabilitation Services line at Rutland Regional. He was Medical Director for the Acute Inpatient Rehabilitation Unit from 1997 until its closure in 2012, and Director of the Occupational and Employee Health Program through 2012. Dr. Kanash is strongly committed and dedicated to providing comprehensive rehabilitation services to the greater Rutland community. Dr. Kanash has been a member of the hospital's board of directors since 2015. His service on the board has been invaluable as he represented the work and perspectives of our providers and patients. It has been a pleasure serving with Dr. Kanash, and we have appreciated his time, expertise, and many impactful contributions to the board throughout his tenures. Dr. Kanash is not able to join us in person tonight, but he is participating in the meeting remotely. To commemorate his time on the board, we have a beautiful framed Peter Huntoon watercolor of the Rutland Regional Medical Center for him. It will be delivered to his office later this week. Please join me in thanking Dr. Mike Kanash for his leadership and dedicated service to the hospital. John Casella. John has been a leader in our community for many years. John and his brother Doug co-founded Casella Waste Management and Casella Construction and have grown Casella Waste Management into one of the largest waste management companies in America. In addition to volunteering his time on the hospital's board of directors, John has been a member of several industry and community service-related state and local boards and commissions. He has also served on various state task forces, serving in an advisory capacity to the governors of Vermont and New Hampshire on solid waste issues. John joined the Rutland Regional Board of Directors in 2013, and during his 9-year tenure has been invaluable in helping to lead and guide the hospital. John served as board chair from 2016 through 2018, with responsibility for overseeing the hospital's financial well-being and ensuring the hospital is providing quality care in our community. During his term as board chair, John assumed the responsibility of finding the next CEO of the hospital when former CEO Tom Udner retired after 28 years at Rutland Regional, and after an extensive search, hiring Claudio Fort in the spring of 2018. John continued to work closely with Claudio and the board as Claudio transitioned to his new role, and less than 2 years later, COVID-19 began. In the early weeks and months of the pandemic, John was instrumental in leading a special executive committee on COVID response, working closely with the board of directors and the administrative team at Rutland Regional. Additionally, in the early weeks of the pandemic, when personal protective equipment was very scarce, John generously donated thousands of N95 masks to Rutland Regional to protect our staff and patients. John is tremendously generous and over the years has contributed to the hospital in a variety of ways to benefit patients and the Rutland community. We owe John Casella great praise and thanks for his leadership, the time, and extraordinary support he has given to our community hospital. John, I invite you to join us on the stage to receive a framed Peter Huntoon watercolor of the hospital and for a photo. Thank you, John.
Thank you again, John. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Foley, Jr., and as Joe mentioned, I'm the vice chair, and I've been a member of the hospital's board of directors since 2016, and the vice chair for the last 2 years. I've had the pleasure of working with Joe Kraus very closely, as he mentioned, as he served as board chair. I'm going to take a minute myself to go off script, Joe, if you don't mind, just to talk a little bit about Joe's service that I didn't put in my prepared notes. And I see David and Aaron and Peg here, and Joe, I got to know Joe a little bit over the last couple of years, and he tells a story of, if people don't know, Joe was one of the folks on the board when the Paramount reopened 20 plus years ago, instrumental in terms of rallying that to what we see today. And so he reminded me that on opening night in tuxedos and his two sons holding the doors open for all of the incoming guests was just an incredible moment for him and his family and frankly for the community. So I don't mean to embarrass you, Joe, but you kind of set the tone for me today by those beautiful words, and I thank you so much. It's a thrill for me to talk about Joe and have the honor to speak on his behalf and talk about a little bit about his term as chair as it comes to an end. Like Joe, this is one of my favorite places as well, so it's another privilege for me to be here. Many of you do know that Joe's an active member, as an active member of our greater Rutland community, an accomplished leader and dedicated volunteer. Joe's career at the state's largest utility, Central Vermont Public Service, spanned 3 decades. During his tenure there, Joe served as Senior Vice President, Secretary and General Counsel, and Chief Operating Officer. Immediately following his retirement, Joe became the volunteer chair of Project Vision, a position he held for 7 years. In that role, Joe worked tirelessly with local law enforcement, health and human service organizations, and community members to lead the coalition's work to address substance abuse, reduce crime, and build great neighborhoods here in Rutland. Joe helped Project Vision forge a path to unite our community and address some of the challenges we faced in Rutland City. He did this through strong collaboration, determination, and a genuine love of the Rutland region. So profound was Project Vision's impact on this community that Congressman Peter Welch recognized Joe and his team's efforts with a speech delivered on the floor of the House of Representatives in December of 2020. The following is a small excerpt from that speech. With passion and hard work, Joe Kraus and Matt Prouty have helped Project Vision lead a diverse coalition of over 300 social and health service agencies and organizations who are united in their goal of making Rutland one of the healthiest, safest, and happiest places in America. Project Vision's allies include the Rutland Regional Medical Center, the Rutland City Police Department, Rutland City Public Schools, Rutland Regional Planning Commission, NeighborWorks, and the Southwestern Vermont Council on Aging. In its early years, the coalition concentrated on treating addiction and substance abuse, reducing crime, and building great neighborhoods. Their success was impressive. A survey conducted in Rutland's Northwest neighborhood just 3 years after Project Vision was founded showed that people felt safer, had a more trusting relationship with law enforcement, and were proud of their neighborhood again. I'm proud to say that Rutland's future is bright. This is a community that has worked together to accomplish their common vision of a stronger Rutland. My thanks to Joe Kraus and Mel Prouty for stepping forward with energy and commitment to ensure the success of Project Vision. Their work has made a positive difference that will be felt by generations to come. Overwhelming. As chair of the hospital's board of directors, those same qualities position Joe well to help navigate the challenges that face an organization as large and complex as Rutland Regional Medical Center, especially during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Joe joined the board in 2019 and has dedicated countless hours learning the significant details of the hospital's operations and working closely with the board, administrators, and medical leadership before assuming responsibility as board chair in the spring of 2020, just as COVID-19 set in. Joe's been the right person for the job. During the past 2 years, Joe's been instrumental helping the board and hospital leadership respond to and recover from the pandemic. His collaborative spirit, direct and thoughtful communication skills, and the ability to bring teams to consensus have been critical components of his successful leadership. Joe's generosity of spirit is always reflected in his concern for the staff and the patients of Rutland Regional. We owe him much gratitude for his considerable time and commitment to the hospital and our community, and thankfully, we will still have Joe's experience on the board for another few years. Like it or not, Joe. Tonight, Joe, to commemorate your time as board chair, we are pleased to present you with a beautiful RMC logo captain's chair. In addition, to honor, come on out here for 1 second. In addition to honor and acknowledge your many efforts over the last 2 years, the hospital will make a meaningful donation in your name to the Palliative Care Therapeutic Music Program, which provides music to chronically and terminally ill patients receiving care and treatment to Rutland Regional and their families. We know the music program is important to you and your family, and we're proud to make this donation in your name. Joe, thank you for your friendship, your dedicated service and leadership to the board and the hospital and to our community. Joe, please join Claudio and I as we present you with your chair. Thank you.
Phil Scott became the 82nd Governor of Vermont in January 2017 and was reelected to a third term in 2020, earning more votes than any candidate for governor in Vermont history. Throughout his years of public service, Governor Scott has listened to Vermonters and is always willing to roll up his sleeves to help get the job done. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Scott and his administration have acted swiftly and consistently to protect and support Vermonters. It is a privilege to have Governor Scott with us tonight as we begin to emerge from the pandemic and come together for the first in-person meeting in more than 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the Governor of the State of Vermont, the Honorable Phil Scott.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. It's great to be here celebrating another year for Rutland Regional Medical Center, and one that we'll remember for quite some time. Tonight is made even more special because we're here in person in the beautiful Paramount Theater. The renovations inside and out are a testament to the resilience of this community. I want to thank Claudio and the RRMC board for inviting me to say a few words. It's been a long, long 2 years. I sometimes refer to COVID years in terms of dog years because it felt like more like 14 years than just 2. I mean, think about it for just a minute. It was just 1 year ago this week when I got my first COVID vaccine. We just reopened bars, and after a winter surge, and restaurants were still at 50% capacity with only 6 people at a table. I repeat, that was just 1 year ago. So I think we can all agree that the last 2 dog years have challenged us in ways that we never could have imagined. I know that's the case for me, my extended team, the legislature, our schools, communities, and I'm sure many of you. But more than any other area, healthcare across Vermont has been tested. And I can assure you, as someone who has been watching over the whole field, I know you rose to the challenge, met that test, and served us well. When COVID-19 reached us in early 2020, Rutland Regional, along with other hospitals, became the front line of a battle we never expected. As cases of this new virus we knew very little about showed up at our doorstep, you responded quickly to care for and protect patients, their families, and staff alike. You also stepped up to help our long-term care facilities, which was essential in saving the lives of our most vulnerable. I know you had some significant outbreaks in those facilities early on, but the partnership with Rutland Regional was instrumental in helping them get through. You were also key to our success in vaccinations, where we consistently led the nation with the highest vaccination rates across the country. And as we work to open vaccine clinics across the community, like the Asa Bloomer Building, Rutland High School, and the Diamond Run Mall, the work at RRMC provided critical support. We estimate that RRMC provided upwards of 60,000 shots, and at the high point, saw as many as 800 people every day. None of this could have happened without your frontline staff, who worked under extremely tough conditions and for far longer than any of us would have hoped. They went above and beyond to help Vermonters keep healthy, all while facing workforce shortages, wearing pounds of protective gear, pulling double and triple shifts, comforting both patients and their families, in person, over the phone, and on video. And doing all of this while managing the same stress in their own lives as the people they serve. We recognize the challenges you faced, which is why we use so much of our federal funding to help our hospitals in particular. This included replacing lost revenue, additional staffing, purchasing needed equipment, and making sure you could support your team as they continued to work on the front lines. But there were plenty of stories of hope and inspiration, and I've admired the strength and the can-do attitude of our healthcare community. The F-35 flyover was another example of how we tried to show our appreciation. As an aside, I think Rutland appreciated it a little bit more than Burlington did, but that's okay. And it's with your help that Vermont led the way through the pandemic. As we sit here today, we still lead in our vaccination rates and across just about every other metric, including having among the lowest per capita hospitalizations, deaths, and cases since the start. As we move into the endemic stage of COVID, old challenges like our workforce shortage are having a major impact. Retaining existing staff, hiring new staff, and making sure we're educating and training for the future is critical to any industry. But public safety is certainly a priority. And in my mind, healthcare is an integral part of public safety. That's why my economic plan starts with training and keeping the workers we have. So I've asked the legislature to fund these investments, about $30 million to recruit and retain nurses, including tax relief specifically for nurses, though the legislature hasn't taken this up as yet. Over $50 million to strengthen our CTE centers, like Stafford, to get more kids into the trades. $20 million more in higher ed and non-degree adult education, on top of what we normally spend. And $2.7 million to pilot a new program that gives regions the support they need to attract, recruit, and train workers. But we all know it can't just be about training, because the real problem is we just don't have enough people. So we also need to meet the needs of workers and their families. That's why my budget also recommends historic investments in childcare. And over the last 2 years, I propose $250 million for housing, $250 million for broadband, $50 million for cell service, nearly $200 million for water, sewer, and storm infrastructure, and almost $150 million to help employers survive and grow. As I said in my State of the State in January, workforce is one of our biggest challenges. And it didn't start with the pandemic, because for years we've been losing an average of 6 workers every single day through retiring and leaving the state. Remember the 6 of the 631 that I spoke about 6 years ago when I first ran for office? It's still true today. The hardest part of addressing the workforce shortage is that it's so intertwined with other big challenges, from affordability and education to our economy and recovery. Each problem makes the others harder to solve, creating a vicious cycle that's been difficult to break. But here's the good news. Thanks to billions in federal aid, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a real difference, because we now have something we didn't have before: the money to tackle many different needs at once. That's why it's so important for the legislature to work with me to get this right. We only get one shot at this. Because in order to make the most of this moment, we have to be strategic and make smart investments in areas that have been out of reach for far too long. If we stay focused, we can grow the economy in every county, leaving Vermont in far better financial shape than it's ever been before. And I know that as community leaders, hospital staff, and healthcare providers, the economy and health of the entire region matters, because what happens here at Rutland Regional impacts all of you. I want to take a moment as well to thank the members of the board directly for supporting this hospital and community. Your commitment and willingness to be part of this organization, to work with the entire community, is commendable. I know how much the hospital appreciates your efforts, especially through the last few years. And I send a very special thank you to outgoing Chair Joe Kraus and incoming Chair Mark Foley Jr. I know a little bit about sitting at the head of the table, and it's never easy. But I can tell you, the reward of being able to help people is tremendous. And finally, tonight, we're honoring another retiring board member who I've known for years, John Casella. I realize John has been on the board for nearly a decade, but I'm not quite sure he's been completely forthright about why he's stepping down. Now, I heard from a reliable source that due to the workforce issues we're all facing, he and his brother Doug are going to dust off the truck they started with, get back to their roots, so to speak, and pick up trash again. I have that right, John? I'm sure at times he looks back on those days fondly and thinks, that wasn't so bad, as compared to some of the things he has to do today. And I can certainly relate. There are many days when I wish I was out running a piece of equipment as well. What I appreciate about John is the way he conducts himself. He doesn't forget where he came from and who helped him get to where he is today. He treats his employees like family and doesn't think he's any better than they are. He has a lot of empathy for others and is willing to help those in need. When I thought about this Wheels for Warmth thing that I developed 15 years ago, I asked Casella Waste to become a partner. There was absolutely no hesitation, even though some said, this will never work, and this is a dumb idea. Since then, this all-volunteer effort has collected over 41,000 tires for recycling. We put 25,000 tires back into use for pennies on the dollar, and we've donated over 600,000 for fuel assistance. None of this would have been possible without the support of 2 generations of Casellas, and I want to thank them for their faith in me. I'm sure he'll be sorely missed on the board, but as we all know, he's not going far. Rutland is his home. You are his extended family, and if there's one thing I know, it's that he takes care of family. Before I wrap up, I've always been someone who tries to put myself in someone else's shoes and gain perspective from what others are going through. So while I've talked a lot about the challenges we face and the strain of the last few years, we don't have to look very far to see just how fortunate we really are. When you think about what's going on in Ukraine, with so many lives lost and millions of refugees who've had to leave their homes and lives behind, I don't take it for granted that I'm joining you in a theater tonight to talk about a medical center, while Ukraine's theaters and hospitals are being bombed. So I just wanted to take a moment and reflect on all the good we have in our lives. And I know we're all sending our thoughts and support to the people of Ukraine. So again, thanks to all of you for your good work and commitment and for inviting me to join you this evening. Congratulations.
Thank you, Governor. If you'll just take it 1 second. I would like to thank you for being here this evening. And as a Vermonter, I'd like to thank you for your leadership during COVID. I'm certain that when the history of these times are written, there'll be one person most identified as being responsible for keeping us all safe. That will be you.
I was going to say Dr. Levine.
Well, he'll get a footnote. But, so thank you for all you've done. I can think of no higher accolade as you look back on your career and all you've achieved of keeping us safe during these difficult times. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. But, oh. Thank you. But I'm just one small piece of this very big puzzle. And if you want to thank someone, turn to the person next to you, thank them, because we all had a piece in this. And if it wasn't for the attitude and the willingness of Vermonters to do the right thing, none of this would have been accomplished. So you should give yourselves a round of applause for what you've done, because we are truly blessed to be in a state that did the right thing, to put politics aside, and to take care of one another like we do so often in any emergency. So thank you very much for all you've done. Thank you, Governor.
Well, that brings us to the end of our annual meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for your time and participation. The meeting is now adjourned. There will be a brief meeting of the board of directors at this time. I would ask all the board members to gather on the stage for a brief photo, and then we'll adjourn to a meeting room for one brief meeting. Again, thank you for all your support. Thank you for all the corporators. As the governor said, it is the strength of all of you that keep us going. Have a great evening.